Recording? Okay. So it's recording now.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress.
Yep.
Where's the screen that I can see?
Yeah, I'm about to pull it up. You see it?
Okay.
Do you see it?
No. Is it in a different chat that I have to click?
You don't see anything, right?
No.
Okay. Okay. You should be able to see it now.
Alright. Yeah, now I can see it.
Alright, cool. Alright. We're ready, guys.
What are you doing here? Go.
Misa, come. Learn some Blender. You can leave whenever you want.
Imagine he starts and then you said no.
Alright, guys, we're gonna get started. Welcome everyone to this meeting. Huh?
My name is
Daniel Lasso. I hope you guys know me. If you don't, well, that's okay. We're gonna start this very general tutorial for Blender to understand the basics and to know how to work around this software.
Okay, very good.
Alright. To get started, Blender, it's a 3D software, very similar to Maya, 3ds Max. You could say similar to the others like Rhino and all the other ones, but it's not, because it's meant for animation. As you can see here, you have like an animation cartoon, because that's what they use. So you can start off with like, you have like general, they have like presets of work, the way you can work around the software. So you can start with general, which is the best one to use. 2D animations, sculpting, VFX, and video editing. I'll explain the difference between sculpting and just 3D modeling. Okay, so let's just hop on general. Everyone's in general?
I can't see your screen. I just see the Discord screen.
Oh, for real? Okay. What's going on here? You see it?
It's still just showing.
Can't see it?
No, I see your mouse moving, but I see the Discord screen.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, now I can see it.
Alright, perfect. So, we're starting off with a cube. That's like the main thing that you get. That's like the general stuff. You get a cube, you get a light, and you get a camera. So, Blender works around cubes, like forms, then lighting, and then the cameras to make the renderings and whatnot, right? So, to get started, pretty much the way you move around is like Rhino. All of you guys know Rhino, so you, instead of using the left button, you use the middle button, right? And that's what you use to rotate, to orbit. If you press shift with that, you move around, and well, that's very straightforward, right? We have many like areas here up here in the top in Blender. Well, first off, you have here the file where you have like the normal stuff, open, close, import, link, all this stuff. You have edit, where I mean you don't really use this. In edit, you go to preferences. That's an important part thereafter to do the add-ons. You go to render to like render images. That's pretty straightforward. Windows to close the windows, move the windows. Help, nobody ever uses this. That's about it. And then you have like the workstations. So the one layout here is like the main one where you just like work around and see around your model. But then when you go to modeling, it's, I mean, this is not really a difference, but it's meant for you to model the cube or whatever you're using, right? So I'll say how to do that later, but that's the modeling. Then you have sculpting, which is meant for sculpting the cube. Now the cube only has 4 faces, so it's not modeling anything, but I'll also show how you can sculpt stuff. Then you have UV editing. UV editing is the way you unwrap a polygon. So a poly surface, in order to texture paint on top of it, you need to unwrap it. Now, if we go like this, if we select this cube, you can see right here how it's unwrapping it, but it's not doing it right, so you have to pretty much unwrap it the right way. And this is how the surface is unwrapped. but we don't have to worry about this too much.
I did.
Then you have texture paint, which works with UV editing, right? And they have shading. And shading is where you work with your textures and your materials. And this is where you have your node editor, which is pretty much a grasshopper only for textures, right? It's procedural node editing to work on a texture. This is the one we're gonna work on the most, plus the modeling one. Then you have animation. This is meant just for animations. And here you work with the graphs of how you can create interpolations and whatnot. Not too necessary. Then rendering, you don't really need this window, but it's meant to just like look at your renders. Compositing is pretty much like the post-processing you do in Photoshop, for example, where you add filters, you add like contrast and all these things. You can do that in Blender too. Geometry nodes is pretty much Grasshopper. So it's not for textures, it's for actual geometries. It's very complicated. We're not gonna jump on this one yet because it's kind of too advanced. And then scripting, which is even more advanced, is literally typing code on top of your project, right? We're not gonna touch that at all. So going back to our layout, the way you edit a polygon is you click on your polygon and then you just press tab. That's the way you go between object mode and edit mode. So I don't know if you guys know Maya, some of you. So the way you go to like go work into the vertex, the edges, and the faces, in Blender you just go to tab. And that way you go into that mode where you can start moving the vertex, you can start moving the edges, you can start moving the faces. So yeah, when you're in edit mode, so you gotta press tab. It says up here object mode. You press tab when you select it. You go to edit mode, right? When you're in edit mode, the way you go between face, vertex, and edge is 1, 2, 3. So in 1, you go to vertex mode and you move a vertex. In 2, you get the edge, and in 3, you get a face. Now you also have it up here in this next to it, right? These little buttons. So you can also shift click both in the 3 of them, and now you can modify all of them together.
How are you doing that?
I can't move anything.
Do you press shift?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So the more you move things around is with G. So you can also have the little move tool right here, like every software, and you have a little gumball. But the easy way to do it is just with G. So instead of
Where's the gumball?
right here, you gotta go and move.
You have to hold G.
No, you don't hold it. So if you okay, so these are the tools right here. So if you're in select tool, all you're doing is selecting. It's not gonna bring the gumball because you're just selecting. But you can still move things if you press G. So if I press G while I have this selected, it's gonna move it around, right? Now this right here, this is the, what's it called? The cursor tool. So this is like kind of a cursor that you can like relocate, put it at different areas to pivot things around it. So you can, so you just gotta go to this tool. This is the cursor.
That's like what is it?
Is to create like pivots. So if you have your cursor here, you can pivot around that, or you can work around. It's not really that important. For now, we just need to focus about the selection tool. Then you have the move tool. The move tool is what brings the gumball, where you can like do the same thing you're doing all the other softwares.
Is there a shortcut to
It's just G. To move is just G, but when you do G, you don't have the gumball. You just move around. But the way to snap to specific axis is like you press G, and then you press the axis you're working for. So if I press G and I want to snap it to the Z axis, I just press G and then Z. And now I'm snapped to the Z axis.
What if you want to snap it to another object?
What do you mean?
What if you work with multiple objects and you want to snap one point to another?
Okay.
It's the same thing with
So-
X, Y, Z.
So if you want to snap to another object, you first need 2 objects. So in order to multiply an object or to copy an object, is Shift D. So with Shift D, you have another one. And if you want to put it next to it, you press, last you're moving it, you're going to press X to snap it, or Y, or Z to snap it to specific axis. So if I snap it to the Y axis, you have it right here. And then I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to go into edit mode, right? And then in order to actually snap it, you're going to have to go up here to this little snap thingy, right? And you just have to press it. And now your thing is going to snap. Now it's snapping. You got to check to what is snapping. Snapping to a specific increment. So you can change it. You can snap it to both. You can snap it to one, to vertex, snap it to an edge, to a face, to a volume, to an edge center, edge perpendicular, to all these things. You probably just want to do vertex, edge, and face. So shift click all of them, and it's a mix of snapping. And now you're going to snap it to whatever vertex it's snapping to, right? Okay, so in order to snap, you have to go up to this magnet thingy, right? You click it, you turn it on, and then you have to tell it what are you snapping it to. So if you're going to snap it to a vertex, to like another edge, Ryan, wake up.
Wait, you said control. Hey, hey, Ryan, like, we have coffee.
Tacos?
Coffee.
You do?
We have tacos too.
I don't
No, because I'm Mexican, you assume I said tacos.
I heard tacos.
All right.
No, like, normally you have.
I don't drink coffee.
So yeah, you can snap it to an increment, which is just like kind of like the grid. You can snap it to a vertex, to an edge, to a face, to a volume, edge center, like whatever. So we're gonna snap it to the vertex. You're gonna move it, and it's gonna snap to that vertex or to the other one, right?
How do you take out another cube like for Scott?
Okay, so let's do it again. In order to before that, in order to create any form, any polygon or whatever, you gotta go to Shift A. Shift A is the one that creates something always. Shift A, and you can add something. So you can add mesh, you can add all these, you can add a curve, you can add surfaces, metables, not meatballs. You can add text, you can add volumes, grease pens, I don't know what that is, armature, lattice, all these things. And you can add the lights and the cameras and even speakers, because you can put sound. So if you go mesh, you go cube, you're gonna add a cube, right? And the cube is gonna be added to wherever that cursor point is, right? So that's how you add it. So let's start with a cube. And in order to duplicate a cube, you gotta like Shift D. That's how you duplicate it. And now it's snapping to a vertex. It's gonna delete you, right? So let's.
Did you keep moving that by accident?
Yeah, it's just like, I guess to put it on the center, the properties of the stuff is in this little arrow next to your like orbiting thing. There's a little arrow that tells where things are. So you can go to your active tool, to your cursor, and you can put it back, I guess. How do you put it back?
I don't have those.
You gotta go to this little arrow here. There's a little arrow. But that's what I'm saying. I don't like using this one because it's okay. Yeah, now it's snapping. Okay, so you gotta make it snap to the center. This is whatever. You keep it like that. But yeah, don't worry about this ball thing. Just worry that you usually just stay with the select box, and everything else you just move it around. So going back to like your cube and whatnot. In order to so to move things around, it's just G. I don't know why it's G, but it's G. To scale, it makes more sense. It's S. You can scale to specific axes too. Remember, if you press a movement tool and then you press an axis, it's gonna snap that move to an axis. And it's just better to use the shortcuts than just going here and like moving it around.
What do you press? Axis?
So you press G or S or R to rotate.
R.
Yeah, so to make this like straightforward. S to scale, R to rotate, and G to move, just because. I don't know why. And so you can like snap it to specific axis, depending the axis you put. You just type the letter of the axis, right? Okay. Now, if we go in edit mode, pressing tab, now we're gonna be able to see the. What?
Control Z does go sit, I think.
Control Z just goes back.
How do you focus?
Or no, Shift Z.
Oh, okay.
Shift Z does
No, just Z gives you the option.
Yeah, Shift Z gives you ghosted apparently. I didn't know that.
If you press Z.
But all the hello Ari, welcome to the tutorial.
Look like you're falling asleep. I am. I'm so glad I don't know.
We're going through the basics of Blender. Do you know the very basics or not? Not at all? Okay. So I'll go through it one more time. So to select something, you just click on it. To move around, the command or the shortcut is G. If you want to snap it to axis, you just after press G, you press the axis you want to snap it to. So let's say Z, I'm snapping it to the Z axis, X or Y. And this works for everything. If you want to scale it, snap it to the X axis, Y axis, or Z axis, right? If you want to rotate it to the X axis, Y axis, Z axis, right? These are the basic tools. You also have them right here to your left, but it's better if you just use the shortcuts. It'll make your workload a lot more faster. We went through all these things up here. Here we have like the layout where you just start laying out things. Here you like model things out. Here you sculpt things out. This is the UV editing to like do texture paint, but we're not gonna go through that because it's more for like video game design and whatnot. You have texture paint, which is for the same thing, and you have shading, which is the one we're gonna go through. It's kind of like procedural shading, like Grasshopper. Animation, probably won't go through it. Rendering is kind of necessary to have it here. Compositing is like a post-processing layout, just like Photoshop, but in Blender. Geometry nodes is like a Grasshopper in Blender, but it's more meant for animations and things that act procedurally. And you have scripting, which is literally code, but we're not going to go through that. So in order to go in layout, and it's where you usually work around things, right? And so the way you add polygons, this is what you start with when you open Blender. You always start with a cube, a camera, and a light, right? But if you delete all this, the way you add things out is with Shift A. That's the best way to do it. You can always go to like the thing, or I don't even know how to use it, but it's better to use your command Shift A, and you can add anything. So you have the mesh, you have plane, cube, circle, UV sphere, icosphere, cylinder, cone, torus, monkey. In the curve, you have all these. You can have metal balls too, all these things. But we're starting just with a cube, right? Now to focus, that's a very important thing. So like if you're far, you're like where I am, right? You don't know where you are. You just right here you have your kind of outliner, whatever you, like, how you call it in Maya. You select your thing, and you gotta press the thing that's before the one. I don't know what's it called, the apostrophe. You gotta go to view selected.
Where?
So the one that's before the one, that's what brings you to like the views. And so to go, you gotta like view selected. That's the way you go to whatever you're selecting. It's not as fast as Rhino or Maya. So Maya's just F, but it does the work, right? And then to go into the views, you can just go here. You can also just Alt and move around. So the way you can look at the views, you don't have like a view only for specific views, like top view, side view. You just have it here. So you can just go to Z, X, or Y. Yeah. You can either do that, or you can like hold Alt and move around, like orbit around, and you'll orbit to whatever view you're trying to get for it. It's not that, I don't know, I don't find it that good to do that, but if you like it, you can do it that way, right? So these are the basics. If you're gonna start modeling, the way you model is you press any object and you press tab. That's how you shift between object mode and editing mode, or what they call edit mode, right? The way you select either vertex, edges, or faces is with 1, 2, or 3. Or up here, you have them like selected. So you can select one of them. If you press Shift, you can select 2 of them. Press Shift, you can select all of them together. Or you can just have one of them and just go between 1, 2, and 3. So 1 gives you vertex, move a vertex. 2 gives you an edge, right? And 3 gives you a face, right? That's pretty straightforward. You usually want to stay with just the selecting tool, At least I find it better. And if you want to move things around, just use G, snap it to the axes, right? But let's go to the straight up to the soft tool, the soft selection, because I think is the thing we can use the most to create cool forms. So instead of starting with a cube, we can start off with an icosphere.
How do you delete it?
You just delete. You press and delete. Yeah. You're gonna start also with an icosphere. An icosphere has more. Okay, so before we can go into that, right here you have like your layers, like you see what's there and what's not and whatnot. Right down here you have like your settings. So right here you have the active tool. This to like change, to show like the origins, locations, parents, whatnot. You can parent things to each other, but we don't need to do that. Down here you have the scene. So this is where you work your rendering. You have in Blender you have two rendering engines. You have Eve and you have Cycles. Workbench is just like, it's not really a rendering engine. Right here you have your format, so you can set up your like images size, your FPS if you're doing videos, your frames, the type of file you're doing and whatnot. Right here, this is just to see layer properties. We're not really gonna use this. This is the scenes, so it's also necessary. This is the world property, so here we can change like the world background and whatnot. It's not gonna show here because we're still in like the viewport, the shading viewport. So just like in Rhino, you have shaded, you have wireframe, and you have the rendering kind of. The Blender has two render viewports. So the first rendering viewport is usually to use kind of the fast rendering, so you can work on it. And then this one is where you use like the hard render, but you gotta sort of set it up. So right here we can set this, we can add like volume things, we can add a bunch of things. We'll go through that. There's like collections, this kind of like how you group things together. This goes through the properties of whatever you have right now. Right here you have the modifiers. The modifiers are very important because what they do is they create, like all these, they create something into your form. So if you add a modifier, it'll modify your shape, and the way they work is that they work by layers. So depending on the order they have, they'll do something different or not. Right here you have like physics properties. That's if you're like doing physics simulations. We don't really need that. There's more physics properties. Right, you have mechanical constraints and whatnot to do animations. You have vertex. These are the like vertex groups. Not necessary to know. Right here you have the material properties. So now here you can create materials and you can change colors, create like, give it roughness and all these things in the simple way. But to actually do this, we're gonna go to the shading thing and we'll go through that. And right here you have the texture properties. We're not gonna go through this because we don't really need to do texture paint, right? So the first thing that you usually add to all of your things, it's not like Maya or Rhino where you can just make things sub D with one click. You gotta add a modifier that makes it that gives it that subdivision. So you gotta go to modifiers, selecting your object, then you go to modifier and you go to subdivision surface. And that's what starts adding that subdivision. So you can give it 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. The more you give it, the more chances your computer will explode. And you have here the levels, the normal levels that you see, and the render level. So you can put like a lower level while you're working on it, and a higher level for the render to have, right? So the thing about modifiers is that these things are not truly applied. So right here we're viewing as if it has subdivided all these forms, but in reality the shape is still how it was before. So if I go in tab mode and I try to edit it, we're gonna see the actual polygons that it has. So I'm really just like editing the form as it was. It's just that it's giving me a viewport of how it's gonna be. Now in order to make this actually be the mesh like this, you're gonna have to go here and press apply. And now if you go into tab mode, you're gonna see that this is applied and this mesh is now with all these subdivisions, right? Well, sometimes we wanna keep it that way so we can work around it. Here in the subdivisions, you can turn it off for rendering mode. You can change a couple things, but that's not really important. But for what we're gonna do, we're gonna leave it like this, and we're actually gonna apply it, right? So let's apply it. So now our volume, it's more intricate, and it has a lot of polygons. Still a quadratic one, so it's always four-sided meshes. If we go into vertex mode, the way you soft select like in Maya, you go into this little tab. So this is the one they use for snapping, and this is the one they use for soft selection. So you can make soft selection smooth, sphere, you can change a couple things, doesn't really matter. And so when you move around, now you're pretty much soft selecting. If you scroll as you're moving around with the soft selection, you can make it bigger or smaller. Just scrolling. Right? So we can start giving some sort of form just by doing this. So we're just gonna do like a cool form. Like start moving it around. So when you did you add the subdivision already?
Yeah, I did that.
And you applied it?
I applied it, yeah.
So you just go into tab, you select it, you go into edit mode, and then you press 1 to go into vertex mode, and then you gotta click this little thing up here. That's what gives it that little circle is what gives it the soft selection that we know from Maya.
And then you just press G.
And now you just start moving it around, and it's gonna like, depending on how you scroll, it's gonna move the entire thing together, right? So we can just do like cool, weird forms. Just don't try to fuck up the mesh too much, because it's not gonna be optimal.
This is the real way that it looks like right now.
What?
Like,
This is weird. I'm not mad.
you said that it doesn't look like you know how I have like the first view and then 3, which is small.
Yeah. So in Blender, you don't have that. You have to add it to it, and that's what the modifiers are. So you have to go into modifier and add it's called subdivision surface. So if I add another one, it's gonna subdivide it even more, and I can keep going until my computer dies. Well, let's not do that. Let's keep it into one subdivision.
Hey, look, when we press delete, look what it says.
What?
It's like a drop down function, I believe.
Yeah, it's like what you want to do.
What do you want to do?
Can we go there?
We gotta go out of edit mode.
Okay.
Not delete.
Ah.
If you're in edit mode, it's not gonna just let you delete. So you guys have cool forms? Or not yet?
I have an iPhone.
I mean, all you need is like a weird form. After that, we're gonna apply the cool stuff.
Oh, okay, so no modifier?
Yeah, add a modifier so it can be more meshed. The mesh is more, what's the name? Hello? So the mesh is more complex. So the more faces it has. Hello? Welcome to the Blender tutorial.
Like just like one piece. Yeah, no.
Okay. So now we're going through the basics. We're gonna do like something cool. Have you ever used Blender?
No.
No?
So you model like Maya or like?
Yeah, it's like Maya. It's like Maya, but there's different buttons. So, okay. All right, guys. I can restart again, so we can all follow through again. And no, I mean I can just go again because I don't feel like they need it again.
Are you playing with a mesh or like?
Yeah, we're creating a mesh and just playing with it, and then we're gonna add a displacement map. All right. So guys. So in Blender you move around like in Rhino, not like Maya, not with Alt, just with the middle button. And to the left you have the normal tools, but in simple ways. Okay, so to add things you go Shift A. So Shift A, icosphere, which is the one with the biggest mesh. You can move around with G, scale with S, rotate with R, and snap it with the specific axes, right? We're gonna go to modifier and add a subdivision surface. We're gonna apply it. So now it's like in Maya, you made the mesh more intricate. And if you go on tab mode, you can start editing that mesh.
So that's a sub D, right? It's not
Yeah.
like
But sub D is not like in Maya where you just go into 3 and you have it. It's you have to apply it. So right now our shape is like this. To actually apply the subdivision, you gotta go into here, modifier, and add it. And you have to add it. And when it's here, it's really just like showing it, but in reality it's not like that. So you have to go into this little arrow and press apply. Or you can just control A. Like select this and control A. Apparently not. Never mind. I'm done. Hold on. Control A. So with control A you apply it and now it's like welded in the form. Now to actually edit the edges, vertices, and faces, you go into tab. And 1 is for vertex, 2 is for edge, 3 is for face, right? But if you want to do soft selection, we go into 1 to select the vertex, and we click this little thing up here. And if when it's clicked and you move around with G, you're soft selecting. And with the scroll, you can make it bigger or smaller, right? So we're just like moving this around, creating something cool.
When I go to object mode, like it doesn't select anything.
What do you?
Like you have to and then I go-
Keep in select box. You have different ways of selecting, but select box is this one. And now you just have this together. So you gotta go into edit mode, select all this and G. Select here, select essence.
Yeah, so one is,
so you type
And then whatever you create is like
no, you type it and then it's just like that. Which is like,
yeah.
and then, yeah, so
This.
It's only gonna be versus.
But yeah, so if you press that one, it's just with the edges.
So we're gonna move it like let's just move it around and get a cool form.
Once you have something selected,
The cool part is coming after we get this. That's when the rendering goes crazy. Okay, so before we do this, what we're going to show to do, I'm going to show you guys how to do something like this. Okay, with the render and the form. But it's going to be easier than it appears.
It's not a free.
It's free. It's an open source software. It's like Linux.
Is there, because I know in like sub D and Rhino, or sub D and Rhino and Minor, you have to make like a, just like you have to make a clean mesh or like an organized subdivision. So when you click in a loop, they
Mhm.
all are consistent. So you have a grid, even if you have like a clean
Yeah.
geometry. Is there like a way to start from zero and not have something like crazy that has surfaces with only 3 vertices?
So you mean start
consistent?
doing it from zero, all the
Yeah,
mesh?
and everything consistent?
Yeah,
Or-
so an easier way you can delete this. And if you go Shift A, in mesh you can start with a plane, which is literally just a square, right? And so the way you start working with the plane, you gotta go on 2 to select. And okay, I'm forgetting because in Maya it's Control E to extrude. Okay, so in Blender it's just E. So if you select an edge and you just press E, you start extruding things out. You just like start extruding. To select an entire edge loop, instead of double clicking, you press Alt click. And now you're selecting an entire edge loop. You just keep extruding with E. Right? So you do it until you get something cool. Usually a plane, it's easy enough. And after you get something, Another way to do it, instead of like what I just did, you can just do Shift A and add a plane. And then when you add something, you're gonna have a little like settings thing here that it only shows after you add it. If you start doing something after you have added it, it's gonna go away and you're not gonna be able to do anything. So here you're gonna be able to change the size and all these things.
How do you get to that level?
Okay, so you got Shift A to add. Shift A is to add anything. And you go Shift A, add plane, and your plane is being added, but this plane only has one polygon. In order to give it more polygons, you gotta right click it. How was it? Control A.
Maybe you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not.
So you just said that.
Oh, it stopped sharing. Can you guys see? Can they see now?
Yep, this is good now.
Cool. Okay.
Like John was upstairs, like you do it.
So, I forget the commands. Control A. Okay, whatever. There's a command to give it subdivisions, but in reality, you can always just you can always just add edge loops too. So if you go into edit mode, you press a face in order to add an edge loop. It's Control E. Oh yes, Control E and subdivide. Yeah, my bad. Okay, never mind. So what I was trying to do is that you have to be in edit mode. When you're in edit mode, you right click and you go on subdivide. And now it's gonna start subdividing the mesh in the way it feels the best to be. So you can go as many as you can. You see the mesh is now more complex. Usually these are like duplicated. Now your mesh is super complex. You can start like doing the same thing, moving it around. Now there's other like shortcuts, like H to hide is like pretty straightforward. And the other ones are pretty, like you can figure it out your own. Cause there's so many, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but if you start moving around and pressing shortcuts, you can figure out how everything works. So this is very similar to Maya. This is self-selecting, so you have to have this activated. Right?
That's why it's doing that.
Yeah, you have to use self-selection. Okay, but let's go back to what I was doing. So we're gonna do an icosphere, right?
Also back to 0.
Yeah. We press the little apostrophe next to the one and you select it to like focus. You can actually change the subdivisions of your icosphere before you start it, so that's probably better. You can make it more complex or less complex. Just don't go past like 5 because your computer might explode.
How do you do that again? Bring out that?
Okay, so Shift A and add anything. So what we're adding is an icosphere.
Which one do you recommend? 2, 3, 4?
What do you mean?
With that subdivision.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. The more, what you're doing as a subdivision is you're creating more polygons. So the more polygons you have, the harder it's going to be to edit your form. The less polygons you have, the more you're going to have freedom to move it around. But as you go through, like, as you start defining more your form, it's good. But it's good to give it more. But for now, we're just going to use like 3. That's all we need. We don't need that many. Because we're going to add something else after that will give it the forms that we want. It's called a displacement map. I'll explain what that is. So when we have this done, with 3 subdivisions, we're going to go into number 1, where you can click vertices. And you click on a vertex, you have to activate this to have soft selection. You start moving with G, you can scroll to give it less force. You don't have to worry about the mesh being clean, because what we're doing doesn't require a clean mesh. So you can just move it around as much as you want. You just don't want like faces intersecting with each other like this. That's never good in any instance. So I want to make sure your faces are moving around. They stay like not touching each other in a weird way. You wanna like give it a weird cool form. Whatever you come up with, it doesn't really matter how you give it the form, because what's gonna give it like that cool is the displacement map, right? So
Yo, how did you do that?
what?
I didn't get the part where you're moving the little points. Like I have the icosphere, but I didn't
So-
get that part.
Okay, so you add an icosphere,
Uh-huh.
you give it 3 subdivisions,
Mm-hmm.
and then you press tab to go in edit mode.
Okay.
When you're in edit mode, you press 1 or you click up here. You have like vertex mode, edge mode, or face mode. In vertex mode, you click any of the edges of the vertex, and you have to activate this little ball to have the soft selection. And scrolling, you can start like moving it around with less or more force. Just make like weird form, whatever you can come up with.
You know why it's moving the whole object instead of just.
Because maybe your circle's too big, so you gotta scroll back.
When you get G.
Oh, because.
Okay. You select them,
Maybe it's
just click over. And now select the vertices. Now you have to just click on the vertices. Now G. And like scroll down. Or up. Okay, cool. Scroll.
good time for animals.
Maybe because he has this.
Look here, G. Yeah, you scroll. Oh, there you go. See?
Oh, yeah.
The circle.
Oh.
You want to make sure that circle thing is like pure. At least you can see it. Okay? So, make a weird form. Whatever you can come up with. And let's jump on displacement maps. The displacement maps are pretty straightforward to understand. Now my mesh is looking kind of weird, but that's okay. Let me do another one. You can also do 4 subdivisions maybe if you want. I think 3 is enough. So we're gonna have like a weird form, cool form, whatever we can work with. Anything really. Okay. So when we have our form, whatever you come up with, now we can jump into displacement maps. Okay. Now a displacement map, it's a 2D image that has white and black values. So like positive and negative values, being the white, the one that extrudes up a mesh, the black one, the one that extrudes it down, right? So we're gonna do an example here. So you gotta click on you gotta get out of edit mode, back to object mode with tab. And when you're in object mode, you gotta go to the modifiers and add, okay. You gotta add displacement right here, displace. Sometimes it's hard to find it, but it's under deform. You're gonna find displace. The first thing it's gonna do is like bulge it up, and it's not really doing anything. So when you have your displace thing, your displace modifier, you're gonna go to new to create a new displacement modifier. You're gonna go to this little the texture that's you're adding. Right now it's just black, so it's compressing everything together. But if we go here, it has like blend. You have clouds, like the normal like noise. So when you go into modifier, okay, go modifier here in the little wrench, and in the wrench you're gonna up in modifiers. And you're gonna go into deform area. You're gonna find displace. That's to add a displacement map. When you add displace, you don't have anything yet, but it's still gonna like make it big for some reason. So then you're gonna add a new displacement map. A displacement map is an image with black and white values that make like a 3D form go up or down. Okay?
What if we have?
Huh?
Another cheese.
I know. Well, so you have to add it. First you add it, then you go new. When you're new, you gotta go to these little settings. And on those settings, now you have all these ways to use, right? So you can use blend, use clouds, distorted noise, magic, all these things, they're whatever. Usually clouds is the one you use. Or distorted noise. You guys got it?
Yeah.
We put something whatever, not the same as.
Let's put distorted noise for now. Okay?
So you have to go on the. You have to go on the offense mode. With tab. Yeah.
You think you're cool now?
What?
You think you're cool now? No, I'm always cool. So yeah.
Wait.
No, that's it.
So, as you can see, the mesh is pretty messed up because it's very low polygon. So what we're going to do is add another modifier. And that's going to be the subdivision surface again. Right?
What?
But it's still not solving it.
Can you find it again? Because I don't know.
Okay, so the displace modifier is going to be under deform. Right? And you're going to find it here, displace.
Yeah.
But the subdivision modifier is going to be under generate. You're going to go all the way down to the subdivision surface. But as we went before, the subdivision surface, what?
How do you have another modifier?
You just go here. I mean, you just, so you have one right here, and it's like adding, imagine like adding layers to Photoshop. And depending on the position, they affect each other. So you just go to add modifier up top.
Oh, so if you add the other one on the top, it will be.
Yeah, it'll add another one, but it'll add it under it. What you want to do is put it on top of it, right? Actually, no, you want to put it under it, yeah. Because then that happens. But it's still messed up because the subdivision is not complex enough. So you gotta add more subdivisions. Right? At least 4 or 3 maybe.
Ooh.
And now it starts taking some form. But it's still sort of messed up, so now you want to touch around the texture or the strength, right?
You said,
Oh, wait.
you said subdividing?
Huh?
Subdivision?
Yeah. So the subdivision modifier, you put it under it, the displacement modifier, you give it at least 3. You keep it that way.
I accidentally put 13. Just shut the whole thing.
Yeah, you can't go past 6. Past 6 it just starts to like 4 is already like yeah.
You can go past 3. Is it?
6.
Past 6. Depending on the computer you have.
I think you can.
Okay?
Come on, man.
So right here you have the strength. The more strength you give it, the more it's gonna mess up the mesh. To change the strength of something without going too crazy, you just gotta press shift. But now your form is like taking some form.
You're in the first modifier in this place.
Yeah, that's displace.
So for the displacement map, could you just apply it on like a sphere, and it would create
Yeah.
a shape for you? So the displacement map is just using basic images, and it's going to create a mesh on top of that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what shape you start in the beginning.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter how many subdivisions you have on it.
It does matter because if I have
The folder.
so if I take out this one, you see that I mean you can technically use this still if you were looking for something different, but if you want something smooth, you're gonna have to add the subdivision modifier to add a bigger mesh.
I'm talking about the first shape. It doesn't matter how many subdivisions it has.
Not really.
Before you apply the
Not really, but it could affect it in a way. So if the subdivision, okay, this is technically if the subdivision was before, the subdivision was after. So okay, if we take the displacements out and we keep it like this, and we add a subdivision, and then we just apply it, and it stays like this, and then you add a displacement map, go new, select here, blend or clouds. Yeah, it does affect it differently because the mesh it has a higher resolution, so it's able to like get it in a better way. So you can do that too. Now your form is better, and then you can add another one on top, and you have something different. If you move around the strength, but I mean this one might. I mean it doesn't look the same as what I had before. So it just depends on really what you're looking for. You can just experiment.
But the initial mesh, does it matter if it has the amount of divisions on surfaces? Does it matter the initial one?
It matters, yeah, it matters. The less it has, like you see this one right here, the more kind of how to put it, the more blended the form is. But the more it has, like right here, it's gonna just give you like something more repeated because it's more resolution. So that displacement map is gonna, let's say, be more exact. So it depends. I mean, you can always do this too if you're looking to make something like this, but I'm doing this first so we can add even more displacement maps on top of this, right? So after you have this, you can also change the way your texture is. So if you put the coordinates, you can put it in local, global, in the object, or UV. Usually UV is the best. Not, at least not for this. For this, it doesn't matter what you put because it's just a weird image of blacks and whites, like with gradients. But for example, sometimes you can add another displacement on top of it, new. And instead of putting distorted noise, you can put an image, right?
Wait, do I add another one on the top of the same one?
Yeah. So you can go right here. Okay, you can collapse it with this little arrow. So you have one displacement, the first displacement that I added. Then you have a subdivision surface. You want to keep it to like make things procedural. And then you can add another displacement. The more modifiers you add, the more things you add, the slower your computer will go, but most of us have computers, so it's okay. And then when you add another displacement map, you can go in here, you can add an image, movie, or not. And you can pretty much open something, whatever you want.
Do
Now,
you already have this displacement map library as a template, or you have to download it?
I have some drawings that I did in like Procreate, but in reality, we can just use anything from Google. So, for example, yeah, so we can go to, I don't know, we can go to Pinterest because anything really works as a displacement map. Okay, so if you guys go on Pinterest or whatever you have, the things that have the most kind of black and white definition, the program itself will still make it black and white after it's processed, but the things that have the most definitions, so for example, this will work pretty good because it's like black and white and you can see this kind of ingrained on top of the mesh, and it might make a cool form.
So the mesh is gonna follow that form?
Yeah, in some way, not exactly, but it might come out something different. So it's really just exploring. So for example, let's save this. You guys go to Pinterest, where I can share this too. I'm gonna save this image.
We go to Pinterest?
Yeah.
Alright, you can put it on the WhatsApp, no?
WhatsApp or Discord?
WhatsApp.
Can you guys all open WhatsApp on your computers?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll put it on the WhatsApp. So download that image, right? Have it ready. And let's go back to Blender. So now we're gonna go to open. Okay, let's go again so we can know how to do this. So after all the displacement and subdivision, we're gonna go and add another displacement. I'm gonna press a new, go to the settings, image or movie, and you're gonna go to open. I'm gonna go wherever you saved that. Actually, I need to look at the name because I don't know what it is. Okay, 35A something. Things that Blender doesn't give you like a preview of what you're looking at. Actually, it does, yeah, right here. So you click right here, you can see a preview of what you're looking at. So we're gonna open that, and now it's doing some weird stuff because it's too sharp, right? But we can change that.
Okay, so you put a new modifier, you put displace, and then you added that picture.
Yeah. To add it, put a new modifier right here, displace. You go on new. You go on the little settings, image or above, and you gotta open the preview. You gotta open the image. To press open, and to actually get what you're looking for, right?
Oh, you do that.
Okay.
Would you work with Blender only with displacement maps and not like, would you choose Maya over Blender to change vertices and everything on your own instead of Blender, or?
It's the same. It's in Blender. It works exactly the same way as in Maya.
But would you choose that, like, to do on your own, like create your own shape and your own design to be like?
It depends. It depends on what you feel more comfortable with. I think Maya it's a really good tool to kind of manually model things because it has like nice shortcuts and it's very extensive. Blender can do the exact same thing. It just uses different shortcuts, and it's probably just getting used to it. But in reality, you can model the same things in Blender that you do in Maya. This is just what I'm showing is procedural modeling, really, because it's just exploring images, exploring displacement maps, and putting it on top of a mesh and seeing what comes out of it. But in reality, you can do any sort of way to model something. There's so many other ways, but I'm showing this one to show something because you can show all of them. There's too many ways to model in Blender. Like I said, there's one here called geometry nodes, and this is pretty much like Grasshopper, but to like more fit for animation and video games. So you can create like, so for example, people make tubes that connect with each other, something like that for sceneries and environments for video games. You do that in here, and you have to use like, you have to start creating like stuff. But I don't know how to use this because I haven't used geometry nodes, but it's just another level. But we'll go through shading, which also uses that procedural noding. For now, we're gonna go on modeling. As you can see, everything's being added. So if you go into tab mode, you're gonna see the actual form because these things have not been applied. They're just like layers on top, right? So we're gonna add that other displacement maps. You go to the modifier, displays, new. You go into the settings and it's in texture. So you wanna go.
1 second.
What? You got it?
Yes.
Okay. So instead of distorted nodes, you wanna go into image or movie. I guess you can also put an animation, which is cool, but I haven't tried it yet. We're gonna do a picture now. You can do open. Go to wherever you save that thing. Just put it on top. Now it's gonna look crazy because these are the white and black values are too contrasting, so it's too powerful in a way. So the way you can change out is just pretty much changing the strength, changing it out until you have something. Now, to get that right, you're probably gonna have to add another subdivision modifier on top of that. And then you're gonna have something. Maybe you can add 2. Now this might make your computer a little crazy, but yeah. As you can see, this is like not very similar to the image, but you can change the way it is being pasted on the image. So you can do local, global, object, or UV.
How do you make it?
Usually UV is the best. What?
How do you make it look smooth like that? From going with.
So after you add the displacement, right? You're gonna add another subdivision modifier.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna give it 2. You can also change the way the modifier works, but this Catmull Clark is the best way usually, right? So now we have this weird way, and now we can start working procedurally with these layers. So if I go back to the displacement, I can change the strength, make it stronger. It's gonna be hard because now there's so many things on top of it. It's gonna go a little slow. And then we can go back to this other displacement, to the first displacement map, and change the whole thing even more. Change it to UV. Just give it like a cool form, I guess. You can also go back and press tab, and you're back to that form, and you can start like. Okay, if you don't want it to go slow, you probably want to turn off all the modifiers in this little screen. And after they're turned off, you can. Right, so you can kind of reshape your form even more, and then you can start.
You cannot edit the CPs that the layer creates.
You can, but it's just gonna make it very slow. So like if I go here and I start moving, it's lagging because it has all the modifiers still being computed. So you just turn them off. What?
You want to know when you're gonna like render.
When you render, you keep them on. But I'll go through how you render it. So you have this form, whatever you can come up with, and you can also play with the subdivisions. If you add more subdivisions, it also will change. But like Jerry did, don't go too crazy because it might explode. Yeah. So for now we can like keep it this way. I mean, this is not too complicated, but this doesn't look too crazy either. But after rendering, you can make it look very interesting. You can start looking at these forms and whatnot. You can also go crazier into creating spaces and like creating like openings, and we could go through that. You would have to use Boolean like procedurally too, but let's keep it this way for now. Okay. So after you have this, does everyone have something similar to this somehow? Yeah. Let me see.
Why you doing We're not doing this. I don't like one. We're gonna have to tell you. Like, close. No, I'm just trying to close.
Just don't touch anything. Wait till it closes.
I'm just closing everything.
Why'd you put 4?
Because last time I put like very close.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm the one doing good.
All right, so let's wait till Jerry can have this.
They're just letting you guys go.
You sure?
Yeah, this is gonna be here for a minute. Wait, when you click escape, it won't make it.
What?
When you click escape, oh. No, because
No, usually it's just better to wait.
Because you know how like a rhino or something, and then just like cancel it, just cancel the command.
Now, what I guess we can also bake it and do more things on top, but we can keep it this way.
Are you recording?
Yeah. I'll send the recording. I don't know where. Discord. You're in Discord, right? You're in the Discord? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
I'll send it on Discord. You can just click on it. But you can play around with this. Don't play with the subdivision. Make the subdivision, just keep it how it is. Play around with the strengths of the other things. And you can get like weird forms. You can go a little crazy and get more like this. And the mesh is technically not right, like it's intersecting with each other, but you can still get a cool render, right? So maybe 0.4. 0.4. Yeah. Look like this. Right? So we're gonna go into rendering now. Okay? I guess we can bake all this if we want. To bake, you just apply. That's pretty much, applying is baking. So you're baking all these things together. So apply everything. It might make it go faster.
How do you apply it?
You just click the little arrow and you add apply. Or Control A. Control A when you're in that layer. Right? So when you have your thing, right, we're gonna go into the settings. Okay? Okay, before we do anything, we have to do a little changing. So everyone go on edit and press on preferences. The first thing you want to check is in system is that you're using your GPU. Because if you start, if for any reason you have your CPU checked or you have a none or you have any other things, you might be using your CPU and your renders will take 10 times more. 3060?
Does this GPU, NVIDIA GPU?
Well, there's like engines to run your GPU to run the rendering on top of the engine to render. So the most famous ones are CUDA and Optics. They're both good. I use Optics, it's whatever. Just make sure your GPU is selected, not your Intel or AM or Ryzen CPU.
Wow.
Because if it's not selected, you're fucked. The other thing is we're gonna go to add-ons, and there's many add-ons that Blender comes like this is like plugins. There's many that come already with Blender, but you only activate if you do specific things. The one we're gonna do is called Node Wrangler, right? Node Wrangler, you're gonna activate it. You can change settings, but you just want to activate it. Yeah, keep it active. That's just gonna give you. This is gonna give you a better kind of way of using the UV mesh to give texture. Okay.
Do I have
Yeah.
to install it or something?
No, it's already in Blender. You just go in add-ons and you look it up. Node Wrangler, and you activate it. You guys got it?
Yeah.
Did it work? Still frozen? Okay. So after your Node Wrangler is activated, we're gonna go into the shading viewport. Okay. Now you're gonna have these things by like a default. The way you get rid of them is you like in between the two like windows, you get this little bit arrow in between arrow. You right click it and you put join areas. And you click the one you want to join it to. That way you can expand your workstation.
What if you put them the wrong way?
You did?
Huh?
You clicked on the wrong one?
There's like a line.
If you clicked on the wrong one, you just gotta go up to this side, find the one that you're looking for.
Like, it looks weird. Like, I'm on my documents. I don't know.
Okay, so you gotta go up to the left, all the way to the left,
Yeah.
go all the way up here, and you gotta get the 3D viewport one.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm there.
You got it? And the one in the bottom has to be the shader editor, right? So bottom has to be shade editor, the top one has to be 3D viewport.
But it looks, it's not like a shading thing. It looks like the regular.
So you just gotta change from the shading to the shading viewport. From normal shading to the other one, right?
It's the same thing.
How do you turn off the background?
No, the background. I know.
You see the background?
It's still the outside of the background.
Up here?
It
Does it change?
doesn't change. Unless you have to go ahead. The other view. The viewport. I mean, it doesn't mean if you have that engine back, you can use this. Yeah, I guess if you took it off, it's not but you can work like this too. Or it's better than not that way. So you just go here again, just go back to general and shade.
Oh.
Is that on? I don't think you can do that. So you can right click and just.
Oh, okay, yeah, question on that side.
So we're back in here. And we're gonna start adding, before we can start adding any sort of texture or a material, we gotta go to the little render properties thing. And we're gonna work with, instead of Eve, we're gonna work with cycles. Cycles is the strong one. We gotta go here on the render properties.
Look at the camera.
Okay.
The little camera, you go on cycles, and the device, you have to change it to GPU compute. Okay? And so to actually see that, you gotta go to this one right here. But there's no lights, so you're not gonna see anything. So let's stay on viewport shading to see what we're doing. Okay? So now, in order to add a new material, you just gotta select your object and click on new. So now it's gonna add right here like a node material. What you have, this battery right here is the output, what you're gonna see. And this is gonna be the principal material where you have like this colors, the surface, how metallic it is, the specularity, the roughness, all these things, right? The emission. You crashed?
I think so, but I didn't do anything.
How did it crash?
I used fast code.
He's gonna follow directions.
Yeah, you're depending on your case a long time ago.
Really?
You shouldn't crash it.
Huh? Tomer, how are you doing? He's not even in the call. Tomer left. Dane, how's it going?
Wait, Dane's in?
Dane's sleeping. He's not even watching. Ari, how's it going? You sleeping already?
Nah, I'm up to date. I'm waiting.
Cool. Dorian? How's Dorian doing? Dorian's gone. Alright.
Yo, right, Metarch is 100 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it.
Yeah. Did it load for you already? What happened with you, Alex? Huh? The battery? Oh. Why didn't you bring the thing?
I'm gonna bring the charger. You want me?
This card is right. Shit.
They will give it up.
Yeah, that's the charger.
Bro, like.
Is it $100 a year?
Yearly.
Huh?
You said month.
Yeah.
She's a week there. She said month.
I mean, you can do the yearly option or monthly one.
Hey, bring my water. Bring my water, please. I don't know where that's at.
How's Lulu going? Amazing.
With my notes.
Do you like Blender?
Perfect, because we
It's the
we're
USDR.
now, when did you get final?
The 20th.
Yeah.
Yeah, ours is 23rd.
Yeah.
And we are, I don't know if you know, but we are working with mycelium. And at the end, we're not going to have a developed model or anything like a developed floor plan or anything. We're just going to have sections in to show the rooms and everything. But the overall is going to be in between abstract and realistic. So we have a bunch of trainings, psychotraining trainings, that we have images for that. And this mapping thing is going to help us in the overall shape that we're creating for render. Because I assume that we would need to learn Blender to do that. Like that's why I'm here.
Well, yeah, because
in Lumia, like mycelium tech, like there's
no. So what I'm going to show now is that you can create any texture
Yeah,
from bottom, but procedurally, like in Grasshopper.
yeah. I've seen the interface, but I've never opened it, and that's perfect. Like this image mapping, that's why I asked if you can have a library or if you can throw anything, because we have the whole training results that we can
Yeah.
input the textures in. So
Yeah. So yeah, you can.
perfect for us.
Yeah, you can also add whatever texture you have. You can add it here as like a bump map or a roughness map or any other map.
Also, you can also add the image to
Yeah,
that, so
yeah.
we can reference to that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's the thing about Blender. Its texturing engine is really good. Maya does the same thing, and Cinema 4D does the same thing, where you procedurally can add textures. But I think Blender's is the best one.
Can you help us during before finals?
Sure. If it doesn't take too much time for me. All right. We have a new student, Kristen. How's it going? Hello. So we're gonna go through the materials. Alex, you're up back. Do you have Blender? You don't have Blender?
Yeah, it's like midway.
Yours still first? No, I can't.
Just don't go into render mode yet.
Just save it for something.
Don't go into cycles. All right.
It doesn't matter if it's not like it, just so you can get the feel of it.
Yeah, I mean, with this, you're gonna see the texture. So you can get close and see what's going on. So right here, we have the first like battery, and we can change the color, right? It's very basic. Now, you can always, what's up?
Yeah, there.
All right. So in order to add batteries in Blender is the same thing how you add any other thing. So Shift A, and you can search them up, if you know the name, or you can go into them right here. You have input, output, shader, texture, color, vector, converter, script, group, layout. These are all like crazy, but you usually just use a couple of them, right?
I don't know the third thing next to the push and pull thing. On the
Where?
top right?
This?
No.
What?
Eso, al lado del imán. Esa bolita que tiene.
Esta?
Yeah, I don't have that.
Turn it on.
Yeah, how?
Just click on it.
No, I don't have the thing.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it just shows the colors of the cables. That's it. It's nothing really crazy. Why don't you have it?
Okay. So doesn't matter. You have to something. Now you can
So, in order to affect a specific area, we can add what we call a texture, right? So you have many types of texture. You have brick, checker, environment, gradient, image, magic, musgrave, noise, Voronoi, all these things. The one we use the most is noise to give a real look to it. So for example, I take this noise texture and I connect the factor to the base color. You're not gonna see anything. I think it's color.
Make links. How do you get that?
You can.
No, shift it.
Huh?
The noise texture option. How do you
So you gotta go to Shift A. You gotta go to texture. That's how you add any texture. You have all sorts of textures, but the one we're gonna use is noise texture. We can also use Voronoi, but let's start with noise so we can understand it, right? Now noise texture has its own like values and stuff. But if you directly connect the factor to the color, you're not gonna see anything because it's not changing anything. Okay. The way you disconnect is Control, right click, and you cut the cables.
Oh, that's good.
It's,
Control.
so when you have a cable connected, to disconnect it, you Control, and you right click to slice it, to disconnect it. Okay. So for example, we connect to the base color, we're not gonna see anything because there's nothing being added. The noise texture doesn't have any color values to add it to the color. So the other one we have to add is called color ramp. So we go on Shift A, search, and color ramp. The cool thing about Blender is that you can put things on top of cables.
Color. You put color ramp.
Shift A, color ramp. If you place the color ramp right on top of the cable, it's gonna affect it. So now it's being affected, but the scale is not right, so you can't see it.
How do you?
So you gotta scale it up right here. You start seeing how this noise texture is being applied. Now you can't see it well because it's still gradient. What? So do you have the color ramp? You gotta up the scale of the noise.
How high can I go with them?
The scale doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you go. But for example, if you want to see it better, in the color ramp you can go from gradient. You can change it into you can change it into a constant. So now it's either black or white. What? What do you mean?
Can you
What do you
make a video of this? Like,
It's doing what?
It's only like 11 portion of the thing.
How?
Is it?
Oh, because you didn't make this.
Oh, I did.
Like, not everything.
So control is like pretty much just big.
Yeah, control A. We have to be on the subdivision on the modifiers.
Okay.
You can move that around too. So the way I can make it look like this is if I go into constant instead of ease. Ease is to make it like a gradient, right? But we're not really gonna affect the color, okay? So let's disconnect the color one. Let's move everything. And instead of color, we're gonna affect the roughness. Okay?
Thank you, Daniel. I'm gonna watch the video later.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Alright.
much.
Have a good night.
Good night. Bye. And you said on Discord? We're gonna
Yeah.
send?
Well,
I'll
also the WhatsApp. I can.
add you on Instagram and then we.
Okay. I can send it on the WhatsApp too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the first thing we're gonna do to actually make this visible, instead of having it white, let's make it black. Okay. And now, these our color ramp thing. We're gonna disconnect it from the color. We had it on the color first. We're gonna disconnect it and now put it on the roughness. We want to affect the roughness, right? So now as you can see, like some areas are like matte and some areas are glossy.
When I change it to roughness, it became no.
So you can also affect the roughness of that color. You can add the distortion, and you can change the detail of it. Detail depends on what you're doing. Sometimes it doesn't affect much, right? Now, if we want to use instead of a noise texture, we can also use a Voronoi. Just type Voronoi texture, connect it. You're gonna get, when it's white, it's just because it's loading. I'm gonna scale it up, and now the roughness of this is chosen by this Voronoi. You can change your Voronoi between all these, and they do something different.
Oh, you just got it?
One more texture. Yeah.
Right? This one can be cool. It depends on what you're looking for. So you can make these things affect really anything you want. So now it's affecting the roughness, but if we disconnect it and we want it to affect the
Can I put this on Instagram?
yeah, if you want it to affect the subsurface, it'll affect it too. Now subsurface, let's change the color again. So to see the subsurfacing,
Wait, subsurface? What is that doing?
so to understand subsurface scattering, you have to think of your like skin. So how the light goes through your ears and you see it very red, that's because the light is being bounced inside your ear, and that's what subsurface scattering is.
Go back to that image.
Yeah, how did you get from the other side?
So the way you can get to see that, you're gonna have to go to the other rendering mode, because in this render mode, you're not really gonna see anything. So the way to see it is first, you're gonna have to go Shift A and add a light. You're gonna have to add an area light. After the area light is added, you press G, Z to lift it up,
Okay.
and then you give it like 1,000 power. Right here.
You said
The light.
area light?
Yeah. And then when you go in this render mode, you're gonna start seeing how this you start seeing how the subsurface scattering works.
Wait.
So if you see through the light, there's some areas where the light is going through.
Did you mess with any of the subsurface?
Yeah, so
What did you do? I'll do it.
so you connect this Voronoi and color ramp, you connect it directly to subsurface.
I have it on roughness.
Well, you can disconnect it and then just move it into subsurface
Oh, I have to.
if you want. You can also keep it in subs. You can also keep it in roughness. Yeah.
Okay, so you said you have the light shift A, and then what else?
Oh, shoot.
You had light shift A.
Mm-hmm.
You had the area light.
Wait, you went okay. Shift A.
Okay, you're here, right?
Oh, in the
You
top.
can't tell me that it's not like
You go shift A
yeah, you cannot tell me.
and you go on light, area light, and then you press G. You press G and then you press Z to lift it up. And all you want is just to have it on top of this. Okay? And when you have it up there, you have to select it. And you have to go to the little light bulb, where you're going to have it already. You just put the power to 1,000 watts. Right? You got it? And then you're going to go into the other rendering mode, and you're going to see it.
When I'm
Wait,
how do I
is it
stop?
supposed to go slower or is it just like?
It is supposed to go slower because it cycles.
Oh, and the longer you leave it on there, like just still the more it renderized the works.
Yeah.
It's like
So like if you have it on top, you're going to start seeing the Voronoi.
what's the one? Like ray tracing.
How do I know if it's enough? Mine
Is
doesn't.
that
Looks like
No. I'm just fucking. That's how black speed comes in. Huh?
You see?
What? Yeah, they speak.
No, there's stuff.
There's something like that. Like they speak like right.
Stuff you want to change
They
to
speak
white.
like the ones that have the accent at least.
Different compute and one active.
That's the other one.
We have an older blend.
Huh?
We have an older blend.
But I didn't have like
These similar to each other.
I don't have that.
You want to go to
I
all
lost
of
them.
them.
I'm asking about the this stuff.
And when you go to your lights, you're going to give it more power. When you get 1,000. Now you start seeing it. And so instead of putting it into roughness, control cut, and paint it to the subsurface. Now you start getting like, start getting the light.
I'm about to put this in my Twitter.
Yo, that's what I said too. Copy.
You can also change the subsurface color if you like a different one.
Wait, how did you add the light again?
So you go on Shift A, Shift A,
On the
Light.
On the other one or something?
right here.
Yeah.
Shift A,
Uh-huh.
light, area.
I'm gonna go lavender.
After you add it, you press G and Z to lift it up.
Yeah.
You put it wherever you feel is good. Then you click on it, and you go into this little light bulb, and you give it 1,000 watts of power. And you can also change the color of the light if you want. Right here, the green light bulb is what you have to select it first.
Yeah.
And when you have it selected, you go to the light bulb, and you have 1,000. You put it 1,000, and then you change the color of the light if you want. You got it?
Yeah, I got
Is
it.
it a pink? No, I don't know.
I think the one mine is black. It's supposed to be black.
Where is it still?
To put it black, you have to go into the little world, the world here, the red world, and go into color and make it black. Change the color of the world if you want to. I mean, you can make it whatever color.
No, let me see. I'll cover.
It was cool like that. It's black.
I mean, it's really whatever you like. But I like black.
It looks like a farm.
It's still pink.
Hmm?
Like, it has pink on it for some reason.
You didn't change the color.
No, I have blue selected, but it has pink. Like yours.
That's just very tough.
Oh, that's.
No, no, I haven't.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Now, so we can also add like volume, but this might. Maybe you don't want to do this if your computer's already going slow. Don't do this.
I mean, what's slow? I mean, I know what's slow.
If your computer's going slow, it's hot and it's taking a while to render.
It's not getting hot at all.
Okay, then we can go now into
Let
world.
me just save it first before.
Yeah, save it. Yeah, always save. Always save.
Is there like a thing where like it automatically saves?
Huh?
Is there a thing where it
Should I
automatically
wait until the noise? Or
No, you just gotta save it somewhere.
Yo, that's gonna be cool. One question. How do I make it not noisy?
So you gotta go into the little camera. You gotta look for denoise.
Noise.
Sometimes you want to keep it noisy.
Nah, it's cool.
It's cool noisy, you said?
Yeah.
It's cool when you're
No, that's not.
I
That's what your brother is going to say. That's what it's said.
told you.
Okay, so the cool thing we can add is, for example,
I'm sorry. Jeez.
we can also make it metallic if you like it. You can just increase the metallic knob, and your thing starts to look metallic.
Wait,
Metallic.
how did my thing disappear?
Disappear.
Yo,
Consecutivamente.
my thing disappeared. His battery.
Yes,
I get it back.
Ah.
So, for example, we have this now. You can add metallic, you can add roughness, whatever you want to make it look cool. The roughness, the more you add, the more matte it looks. The less you add, the more like glossy it looks. It's really to your preference. Whatever looks cool. And so the other cool stuff we can add is if we go into the normal mode, so it doesn't go slow. We're gonna go Shift A. We're gonna add another light point, right? And we're gonna use G to move it around. Just put it somewhere to the side.
It's a big area, right?
No, just the point. So light point instead of area, right? And this point, we're gonna go and give it like a color, cool color, like red. And we're gonna give it a power of like 500.
You go on the camera for that, right? Don't worry. Where do you go for that? On which one?
On the little light bulb, but you have to have it selected. Okay.
Any random color?
Huh?
Any random color?
Whoa.
Yeah, any color. And then you can move around your light, find a position that you like, right? And so,
Both of them at 1,000 watts, right? Or how many watts?
huh?
1,000 watts both?
500 should be good. And so that other light that you just added, we'll have two area lights. That other light that's a point now, we're gonna go back to the little world, go on volume, and add something called principled volume, right? It's gonna make everything black, but you gotta go into density and give it 0.001 or 0.01.
And volume is.
Which principle? Principle volume?
So you go here
Wait.
on volume, principled volume. You gotta like give it a density of 0.1. You can also change the color to whatever you like.
My computer is worse than yours. My computer
And so now you're adding some sort of ambience. Now you can move this away so you don't see it that much. Maybe give it more power too. Like you said, 1,000 should be good. And now we can start to like find an area that looks cool.
I don't know what's somewhere else.
You got it?
Yeah.
No.
Damn, your thing is like.
No, because I put.
You put it on top of it.
Yeah, I put it so that way.
No,
That gets
it's
it
hot.
That gets it hotter.
Makes it hotter.
Sí, la pendeja no se estudia.
No, but I pressed world and stuff, and now it's clear everything.
No, yes, we have to go to you have to go
At
to
least I have something.
principal volume.
Pero sí lo van a.
Get it and escape.
Ya.
¿Mm?
La pendeja no se estudia.
Parece que tú sí tienes que
Tú sí tienes que estudiar, pero no lo doy.
estudiar. Tanto estrés que tienes que estudiar para hacer.
Guys, let me record it.
It is huge.
Cells. Seriously, how's it just
Wow, really?
Yeah.
But in Maya, it does
Wait,
it well.
how do I like?
Because you're rendering.
Yeah, in rendering. In Arnold.
Well, but this is real time rendering.
Oh, like as you move.
Yeah. So it's a lot
Is there a
more.
way to turn that off?
Yeah, but you're not gonna be able to see. So if you want to see it on this one, you can go to this one. And you can go and add scene lights and scene world, and it should do something similar, and it'll make it faster. But it's a cool way to kind of work around it. You should do that so you don't. You can hear that next door.
Oh, that's nice.
So, does everybody have a cool form and a cool texture and a cool light? So if we on the light, for example, to like go around our thing, we gotta increase the radius. Maybe we can also increase the power to 2,000. Just gotta play around with it. You find something that's nice.
Okay, that.
Because it's you.
So after you find cool form,
If it's that.
Yeah.
you can change the light. The more light you give, the volume will change more. Like the volume principle that you added before. Just find a position that you like. And so now, after you find something cool, you gotta go back into viewport shading. Let's go back into layout mode. And now we can start adding a camera to do our first render. And finalize this first tutorial.
Okay, so
So go back into layout mode and stay on viewport shading. Now before we start our render, we gotta go into this output properties. Oh no, before I start render, we're gonna make our camera. So just how you add a light, we're gonna go Shift A, we're gonna go into add camera. Okay? Now the camera is gonna be placed somewhere random. You don't really care about that. You're gonna like get the view that you like, and then you're gonna press Control Alt 0. Okay? And so the camera is gonna fit to whatever view you're looking at. You first add your camera, then you go to the view you want to create, Control Alt 0. And now you'll see your camera being added to the position that you are.
Control Alt 0.
It doesn't work. So your camera's right here. Go around. Control Alt 0. Oh, okay. I think it only works if you have the other side things.
Oh, you want that?
Yeah. So instead,
It's more advanced.
we're gonna go into viewport. Let me see.
So instead of Control Alt 0, we're going to camera. Okay, let me see how do you do it. Okay, so we're gonna go into view, align view,
Wait, how did you go back into grading? How did you go back into grading?
huh?
How did you go back on the grading and mine doesn't show the grading? It doesn't matter.
You gotta go here. Viewport shading. Or you can just press Z and you gotta go between like the shading modes.
Is it shaded?
Huh?
Is it shaded?
Yeah, like this.
Got it.
Okay.
You gotta go back to grading.
So you get the view you like, and you're gonna go on view, viewpoint. No, you're gonna go on view. What was it? Align view, align active camera to view. Okay.
Oh, you gotta add a camera first.
You add your camera first with Shift A camera,
Uh-huh.
and then you place your view wherever you wanna have it. Go on view, align active camera to view. Okay. Now, if you select your camera, you can also move it with G. So if you press G, you can start moving around, start rotating and whatnot. Same way you move everything. Right? You can place it wherever you like. You can also go and render for a second and see how it looks.
Can we further apart a little bit the camera?
Hmm?
Like, can we make the camera look further apart from the image? Like,
Yeah. So you wanna go to camera? We have two cameras. No. Shift. Down. This camera, you gotta have this little arrow. Go view.
Select the
And oh no, you gotta go to camera here. Camera settings. Right. So you gotta reduce the label
Okay.
after you have that, just looking for that. After you have the camera selected.
What?
After you have the camera selected.
What happened?
What do you do?
Well, you place it. Did you place it already where you want to have it?
I think so. I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
So you said view, align view, camera.
Yeah. Now you wanna go render mode for seconds. You gotta go back on layer on layer layout. We're not longer shading. You're gonna to go into your camera, you gotta just click on this. Click on the green. Yellow. Okay, so just click on the camera. Right. This one is another camera. Where you have to select it. Select it. Okay. And as you select it, you can press G to go around.
So, after you have your camera placed, you can even like move around your object. Maybe like a different position. Or just keep it like that. Is your stuff, do you guys have everything framed the way you want it already?
how do you move your object? Like, rotate it?
You select it on. Select it. Yeah, this.
No, just hold.
Your light, for example,
Oh, you got to lay out.
So in order to render,
I know.
So before rendering, we're gonna go to the little like printing thing to actually put the output properties. We can change the size and the resolution of your camera. We usually want to keep it like full HD. If you go past that, it's gonna take longer to render.
So what's the thing? When you are creating?
The little printer thing under the camera, that's where you set like your output.
1900 is good?
Yeah, it's the one that it's set normal is like the good one always, like full HD. And then you want to go here into output, a little folder, and go wherever you want to save it. This is where you're gonna save it.
You put where? Saving.
You don't save it yet. You just put where it's gonna be saved.
Okay, you go to.
So you gotta go on the little printer. You gotta go on the output, and then you go on this little folder. And you place you put where you're gonna place it. Okay. And after you have that, all you have to do is go and render image.
You just go render image?
It's gonna start rendering.
1 hour.
Okay, so.
So, you go here, you go into this, place it wherever you're gonna place it,
Yes.
So render.
Like that?
and give it a name.
Hello, there we go. Light.
And after you have it, you're gonna just double check for samples. So when you have the render samples on B128, like
View that.
1,024.
Hey, how do I cancel it from that one out? Censor.
Just click off it.
Just exit?
Yeah. So then, to order to render it, you want to get rid of this. It's not rendered double. So you want to render when it's like this.
That looks good.
Render. Start rendering. Why does
Yours was so fun.
yours does by square? That's weird.
I
That's very
I
rendered too.
didn't change it.
Who else is good?
don't go back and change the lighting.
So you gonna cancel this one?
No.
Just cancel it. You just gotta click on the lights. So you have that area light and the point light.
Okay.
And you have to go to the level. You can choose power, you can choose
It's not.
and the radius.
Where's your user, right?
Now to render, you want to make sure that you gotta wait till it renders.
How long do they usually take?
Depends. The more samples you put, the longer it takes. The more powerful it is. The slower it makes. So there's mine is at 192 out of 4,000.
Alex, did you take
Yeah.
you have any of that?
Wait, how much?
60?
Mine was
One?
The hell?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, just make sure you use GPU. It looks like if you're using it.
Why is it rendering?
Okay, you also might want to use Windows.
Weird.
Turn on Windows.
Okay, now it's actually it's a great option.
Also, you want to frame it a little bit.
Why did I do that again?
Oh my gosh. Those things are elements.
And you can also go into the camera and change that. So then after it's like this, you denoise is just gonna get rid of the noise and might make it better. You're gonna put it in half. How should you?
This thing doesn't have a lid.
No, but it's up to your render.
Flash. Fixing it for you.
Thank you.
This is
Yeah.
You have more paper towels? Yes.
Actually, I'll do that.
You want to look for, you can just look for your render. But yeah,
No, I hate the cover.
but yours is move fast.
No, why is there that one? Huh? Down.
What part do you use? Okay, so
I'm gonna take up everything off that.
no, that's good.
The white. I need more white.
Which
So it's
one's
nice
nice?
to purple.
We don't have shit. No.
Yeah, because you're fucking Oh, this one, I apologize.
Bro, do something so we can like post it and they like, wow, we're doing stuff.
Yeah, I'm not guessing this one. I don't like it. Just Photoshop.
Finish. Let it finish. Let it finish. Let the render finish,
Ooh.
and then we see what we do.
It's very cool. It's not, it's still
I
time.
know.
I was looking. You're using my fingers.
Yeah, no, finish it.
So guys, I'm gonna end the recording.